Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today on today's edition of the Even Better podcast. This is Sinikka Waugh, and I am so delighted to welcome you. This is part of our ongoing mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help us all have even better workdays so that together we can co-create better communities. And I am delighted to welcome to our episode today. I'm delighted to welcome Myles Finn. Myles, thank you so much. Mr. Finn, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And what a cool idea for a podcast. I just love that you are helping people help themselves and helping people like just have a better day. I think that's so beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And I just love what you are doing in our community. And for those of you who don't know Myles Finn, I am delighted to introduce you. You may have heard, you may have seen, you may have witnessed some of the cool things that he did as he was introducing cool things here in our community. So I will let him tell his story, but I'll backtrack just a little bit because I met Mr. Finn about 7 years ago. I think he's in his 7th year teaching here at Indianola, at Indianola High School here in Indianola, Iowa, where I have the joy of living, and I've been living for about 25 years here. When he joined us here as choral director at Indianola High School, he was just instrumental in bringing a lot of energy and a lot of life and a lot of joy into the already very, very capable and wonderful music program. We've had a strong music program here in Indianola for many years. It's part of why we have loved being part of this community. And he added to that music program, that choral music, the vocal music program here. And both of my daughters had a chance to work with him in various ways. And my daughter Sophie was in his show choir, participated in show choir with Mr. Finn. And then he did some really cool stuff and some innovative stuff that got picked up by social media. And that just went viral and was super fun. And but before he went viral and before he was famous, he was already full of energy and he was already doing these really great things to bring out the best in students and just have a better workday by being fun and being high energy and being authentic and bringing talent and energy and positivity and allowing students to be themselves at school by being himself in his workday. And so this is what I know about Mr. Finn. And he, one of the other things that I thought was really cool, and I'll share this and hopefully this is okay, but that I thought was really cool was that in the very earliest days when we would talk about like show choir practices and the show choir events and the prep would show up, Mr. Finn would talk about his own family in that. And there was this, while there was a separation between work and life, there was also this awareness that who you are, Mr. Finn, shows up at work, but your whole self. It's not just I'm a work me and I have a life me, but my life me is here at work. And let me just tell you about my family too. And I loved that. And I appreciated that. And I think your students appreciated that as well. So with that as an intro, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about you, and let's start talking about being our authentic selves at work.
You are so sweet, and you just make me feel so good about the things that I have done. So thank you for such a kind intro. And I think like you talking about me being my authentic self has always kind of been my MO. Like that's kind of the thing that I've always found important when teaching young people and helping them kind of become their best selves by showing my best self and showing how I am a person outside of the classroom, how I have a wife and 2 beautiful children, and I love talking about them, and they are the most important thing to me. But this is also something wonderful that I get to do by working with young people in the classroom. Yeah, but like you had kind of alluded to, so it was the fall of 2022 when these TikToks started going viral, and it was just kind of the weirdest thing that I had not at all intended upon happening. My wife and I were talking about the best way to introduce our spring musical. And we always do that in the fall so that students have the ability to like get themselves prepared for auditions and things like that and get themselves excited in that way. And so we decided to do it in a creative way. And 76 million views later, here we are, and I am now considering myself like an influencer, but obviously considering myself a father and a husband first, then a teacher, then an influencer after that. So it's been an interesting journey trying to navigate my priorities in that regard. It's been an interesting journey. Also making sure that I'm staying true to myself through any content that I'm creating, any work that I'm doing with my students and things like that. But still remembering that I'm, just a nerdy 31-year-old guy that likes Star Wars and playing video games, and showing that love for being myself and showing my authentic self on a daily basis with my students has made my relationships with them better, and I think the learning that they do in my classroom even better.
You bet. You bet. So let's talk a little bit about I think one of the things that sort of thematically teaching students, teaching young people to be more empathetic. Let's go there as a theme, helping them understand that matters. Teaching them empathy, teaching them how to be empathetic. I think music is one of the places. Choral music, vocal music, music in general, and you teach musical productions. This is a place where it's an art form where we can understand empathy, where we can start to connect with other characters. Let's talk about what are some of the ways that you start to help students understand the idea of empathy?
So I'm incredibly fortunate in that my wife is a school counselor. And so she and I are constantly just discussing how to, address certain topics, and empathy being obviously an incredibly huge one for us to try to tackle. But I attribute most of my desire to be an empathetic choral musician or be an empathetic teacher. I attribute all of that learning to my collegiate choir director, Dr. Nelson at Wartburg College, who specifically talked about the importance of vulnerability, and talked about how you have to cultivate kind of a garden of trust within your ensemble, within your friend group, within your families, within whatever relationships that you're talking about, and have that vulnerability with them in order for you to have any sort of conversation, in order to have any sort of back and forth with people. It all begins with that vulnerability piece, and vulnerability for some people can be so scary, and I think for such a long time has been sort of frowned upon as weak, but it's not at all that. It's the willingness to open up, the willingness to be, to kind of show how the inner you is ticking on a regular basis. And like I said, people get nervous about that. People get nervous about showing themselves because they feel like they have to put on this facade on a regular basis of this is who I am, this is who I'm trying to represent. But it can be so much more than that. You can show what makes you tick as a person, what makes you, want to get up in the morning and go do this thing. For me, like I was talking about, I love introducing my family to the different music that I am obsessed with. So my 3-year-old right now is listening to like Bach motets. He doesn't like them necessarily, but it's something that we are doing together. And so I say that because I will talk about that on a regular. I'll talk about, getting my kid to love the nerdy music that I love, or introducing him to that, at least with my students on a regular basis, and oftentimes get emotional about just seeing him growing as a human, and I discuss that, and then from there we talk about the importance of what is your life at home, how can that change, and I always tell my students, like, there are going to be days that your home life isn't necessarily setting you up for the best day at school, if to put it plainly. And there will be times when you're not going to be your best self when you come to school. But the importance of having those conversations, and the importance of saying, I am struggling today. I need to, get this off my chest. And I tell my students every day, like, make sure that I have an open door policy. And my students know that anytime that they need to come and chat, that they do so. But it all starts with me being willing to open up about myself, being willing to, you know, experience emotions with them. If I, you know, am frustrated with the way that something isn't happening the way that I want it to, or if I'm just brought to tears by this beauty of a piece that we're working on, I'm trying to be more cognizant, and I think that I've done a pretty good job of that, of just being willing to show that vulnerability to my students. And I think they kind of learn from example and are able to then take that empathy piece and kind of run with it a little bit more.
So let's go there for a second, because I think one of the things that often shows up in some place like show choir, or even choral music in general, or things like big productions. And I think in your introduction, sometimes I think I've heard you use the word goofy, right? Goofy choir teachers, right? There's
Mhm.
there's this high energy, fun loving, goofy, high energy, positive that can almost, what if it's too positive? Is there, how do you get over the sense that, wait, it's not all fun and laughs and sunshine,
Mhm.
that there is, that it's okay to have the somber moments, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be vulnerable on the other side. It's not all joy and puppies and sunshine.
Mhm. I think what I have learned, like just from being a teacher, I've only been a teacher. This is, I think, my 10th year of teaching. The one of the first things that I got good at was learning to read the temperature of the room. So
Mhm.
whether that is we are singing a piece about the Holocaust, or whether that is we had a student's parent pass away, being able to just kind of feel those things in the room, feel the vibe, or you know, begin having those conversations and have, like I said, that open door policy so that students are willing to talk to me about that. I think what that does is that just sets me up for success. That sets me up for having a successful day in the classroom, and being able to say, you know, today is not our best day to go through and solfege 32 measures of a piece, because that's going to be something that is just going to take too much time, and you're not going to have the emotional energy to be able to do that. So being able to just kind of redirect the energy in a good way, I think has been a skill that I have worked really hard to get good at. But I think it's incredibly important to start by kind of taking the temperature of the room, so to speak. And it's 68 degrees, not that. Being able to like actually feel kind of like what is happening in the classroom, being able to just like kind of keep my ear to the ground so that I know what is happening, so that I'm able to direct my energy in the right way. Because I feel, like you said, if I come out with, you know, sunshine and rainbows, and, you know, maybe something tragic has happened, or maybe it's just been a tough day. You know, we're in the middle of February and kids are just drowning in homework and auditions, and some kids are getting ready for college. Like, knowing that not every day has to be productive in the eyes of my administration, if that makes sense. You know, like there are going to be times when being productive to me may mean working on the relationships with the people that I've got in the classroom, rather than working on my concert music or working on my next project that I've got going on. Working with the students that I've got in the room, working with the emotions that I've got in the room, working with everything that is happening can be more important than what I'm actually working on for my next project.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, how about when we think about the productivity? So let's follow that thread for a second. The idea of productivity. There are a whole bunch of us out there in various workplaces. I'm thinking about how this affects our workdays in various workplaces, who are teaching to tests, or working to milestones, or working to specific deliverables, and measured by our productivity, and who feel that productivity is the measure of success, our success, our metric of joy, our metric of worthiness is measured by how much we got done today, how many boxes we can check today. You've just said that maybe not all days can be measured by that. So let's say you're facing a student or a colleague and they're wrapped up in this moment that says, but I have these boxes to check. I have these measures, these deliverables to do. And you've noticed that the temperature of the room is such that we're not going to check these boxes today. What say you?
It's hard. And obviously it's going to be case by case basis because there are going to be some where I can just be like, all right, let's have a quick chat. Do we need to just pause for a second? Do you need to go sit in my office? Do you need a cup of coffee? Like something like that. Or if it's something bigger than that, then maybe the productivity becomes let's talk, let's feel, let's make sure that we are I almost like put on a counselor's hat in that moment. But I think being able to then redirect ourselves back into, for me it's so beautiful because we can feel emotions through music in such a beautiful way. So much so that there will be times when I know that there are a lot of maybe struggling people in my classroom, and I won't address the struggle. I won't address the pain and the things that these kids are going through, but instead I'll let them feel through doing the things that we are doing, through singing a beautiful choral piece or just letting them kind of get lost in the music in that regard. As for how that relates to somebody in a 9 to 5, I feel like you have to start with the person. You have to start with, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you working this job simply to make sure that there is bread on the table for your child? Think about your child. Think about the beautiful time that you've got with them. Think about the wonderful relationship that you've got with them. And then maybe that will make the work that you're doing a little bit less stressful or or
Mhm.
or less taxing because you know the why. I think you kind of have to start with the why in order to make sure that you know the what and the how.
Yeah. So you've just offered two things that I think are really telling and I suspect are things that you do yourself. One of them is the idea of turning to music, right? That feel
Mhm.
those emotions through music. Music allows us to experience so much. So what's on what are some of the things on your I'm not going to say playlist, or you don't have to name specific. Maybe there are artists, maybe there are genres. Where do you go when you're having those big feelings? Is it do you go to particular eras or epochs of music? What do you do when you're feeling big feelings?
There's a gamut. There's like a very wide gamut of what I would reach out to. I mean, there are times when I am just in that emotion when I need to feel a little bit more, and in that sometimes I'll turn to um songs from musicals that I love, or there are some beautifully written choral pieces that I have fallen in love with. There's a Minnesotan composer named Renee Clausen that had a very huge impact on my collegiate choir director. And he just writes incredibly beautifully and just makes you feel the music in your heart very, very deeply. And then there are some times when I'm just like, I need to step away from choral music for a little bit, and I'll, put on some techno or listen to, the latest like dubstep or something, and just like kind of zone out just a little bit, and but that's the beauty of music, is that I can tap into these different emotions in different ways. If it's, I just want to like feel some drum and bass for a little bit, I know that I can tap into that, or listen to a sad country song about tractors and beer. Like if that's what I need to do, we can do that. Very rarely am I listening to country music, but choral music has been such a beautiful outlet for me, and such a fun way for me to be able to process things and ask important questions. And I the thing that I love specifically about choral music is its connection to poetry. So I
Mm.
can so I can really read into my interpretation of both what the poet was talking about and what the composer was trying to interpret through their composition. And makes me think a little bit deeper about um, whether it's my struggles or my the things happening in my life, or the things happening in my kids' life, or things happening in my students' life. Yeah, choral music it is so beautiful. If you haven't listened to choral music, I'm just like giving a shameless plug out to your listeners. Like there are, obviously we're going all the way back to like medieval era of music that was written for voices specifically, but there's so much beautiful music to listen to. Listen to Bach. Like just start with Bach. It can be a little heady at times, but just the intricacy and the beauty just makes you kind of take a breath and just and then you can go about your daily life. But start with Bach.
Start with Bach. Oh, I love
Yeah.
what a great
Yeah.
ringing endorsement. And I am grateful for the influence of choral music in my
Oh,
life. Yep, I'm super grateful for that influence and a great place to start, for
yeah.
sure. So I was following a thread that you had taken, and one of them was the ability for music, and as a linguist myself and a literature major, and I've got a master's in poetry, and loving your nod there to the poetry and the way that
Mhm.
words and the written word can express and unpack so much and can teach us so much about what we're feeling. So I appreciate that. And then the intricacy of the way the composer, the composition, and the music and the word together brings so much and can help open so much of our lives and our emotions and our feelings and the intricacies there and the way it's all woven. Love that you brought that together. But you were also onto something else that you had said earlier about the music itself can help us have that feeling. But then you also went into the why, right? Going back to the why are you doing what you're doing? So in a daily moment. So I'm sort of following threads that you've said. One of them you started with being authentic and then being vulnerable and reading the temperature of the room. And then we kind of went into the allowing music to let you feel your feelings, right? Feel your emotions and experience those through music. And then knowing that productivity might not happen, but getting to the why are you doing what you're doing and using that to help you face your day. So how about you? What's your why? What gets you going in the morning?
There are a lot of whys. There are a lot of reasons that I specifically went into choral music, but there are a lot of reasons that I continue teaching. There have been so many people. I shouldn't say so many people. There have been a lot of events that have made it so that being a teacher is a hard thing to do right now, and for a lot of people, I've got a lot of friends that began as choral colleagues and are now working a 9 to 5 and are now, out selling insurance or they're doing something that is completely different than what they had pursued in their undergrad, or even some of them into their graduate degrees working on choral music specifically. So for me to be able to come back and say it is about the emotional learning that students do through choral music. I had such a beautiful experience when I was in my undergrad, being able to just feel feelings. I had a lot of things that I needed to process mentally and emotionally, and I was able to do that through choral music. And so a lot of the time, I am trying to not recreate that scenario, but give my students kind of a similar experience in that they are able to process things through the music that we're doing, or through even the process, even through, learning the notes and rhythms. Because when I hand them a piece of music on day one, it's never going to be perfect. It's like I always give the analogy of like molding clay. If you were to start with this hunk of clay, it's an ugly, it looks like something obscene. And then from there, we're then able to mold it into some beautiful pottery or something like that. My students, when they are first given a piece of music, it looks like that obscene little chunk of clay. And then from there, we get to mold it, we get to create it into something beautiful. And what like a perfect analogy for creating anything in life, but making something either out of yourself or making something physically in the real world, being able to take something from nothing and turn it into something beautiful. And truthfully, I think that is where my why begins, is being able to, one, feel the emotions and being able to process things and being able to have beautiful experiences like that. But then you're also learning such a good life skill of being able to take something from nothing and turn it into something beautiful.
Take something from nothing and turn it into something beautiful. So what are some of the things you're working on today that are helping you do that? Some of your passion projects, for example, that where you're taking something and creating something.
Stepping outside of my wheelhouse definitely has been working on creating a book of some of the warm-ups that I've been doing in my classroom. I was one of those kids that always struggled in like English class and things like that. So thankfully have gotten much better. But I always struggled with like having a lot of self-consciousness about my writing, and the way that I even put pen to paper. Like I get nervous about doing things like that. And so being able to kind of get out of my shell in that regard and work on this book has been really, really fun. Obviously the next issue is finding a publisher, but that's a whole nother story. So, going through and working with that is something that I, took from nothing and am turning into something, in that it was when I had first gone viral, it was for me announcing my musical. From there, I was like, oh, I could kind of run with this and and things like that. And what I'm doing is I'm taking those warm-ups, putting them pen to paper, and being able to hopefully share them with people that have, found interest in the things that I'm doing, or maybe even help choir directors that are struggling or just want something new, to be able to take and run with something that I've created. Give me a huge sense of pride in that, and being able to share my love for choral music and my love for being in front of kids. Being able to share that with the world, I think is kind of my next big step. Not that, I mean, like, I've already taken some pretty big steps in being an influencer in the way that my socials have gone, but being able to do something that is completely out of my wheelhouse. I think I'm pretty good at being in front of a classroom. I don't know that I'm pretty good at writing a book. So,
Right.
it's definitely me stepping outside of my comfort zone and creating something.
Hang tight, we'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Your Clear Next Step and the Changemaker Certification Program.
Would you like to save time by solving the right problem sooner with a realistic and measurable plan? Reduce overwhelm by finding more sustainably productive ways to work? Improve employee morale by creating more positive workdays from within? Stay competitive by tightening your turn or increasing your agility in adapting to changing customer demands? If you said yes to those things, then we have the solution for you. You'll get 8 full-day virtual sessions over 10 months, plus 6 hours of one-on-one coaching, 8 hours of intentional networking, and 8 hours of personal reflection. The growth that we've seen is absolutely unparalleled. Our participants of prior cohorts have remarked about how phenomenal their results have been.
Interested in becoming a changemaker? Give us a call at 515-442-0545.
So let's go back to that idea of authenticity and vulnerability and feeling our feelings, right? Let's go back to that same idea that you're teaching your kids and creating something out of nothing. How are you going to use those very same lessons to do what you're saying you're going to do? How are you applying that right now to your own life?
I think me talking about it right now is me being a little vulnerable, because it is scary, and there's the possibility that it never comes to fruition and it never gets published, or it never, even leaves my computer files. But I think me being willing to share that goal, me being willing to say, this is something that I want to do. I don't know that I'll be good at it, but I'm still gonna give it my God's honest try and see how it's going to go. But also, I think the music that I have done with these warm-ups has been authentically me. I never will pick something that I'm like, oh, that's kind of lame, and then record it and put it on TikTok. Like, everything that I've done, I have been super excited about doing. And I think that comes across in the videos that I do. Like, I think people, not to try to figure out how the algorithm works, because I think that is a terribly dense subject. But I think when people see me being authentically me and me being goofy and fun, and it's just a short little snippet, it kind of gives people a good glimpse into my classroom. And I think people enjoy the fact that I am being that authentic person, and being real in front of my people, in front of my students. So what I'm doing is being authentically me in front of my classroom, is then hopefully being put onto paper and being able to be sent out to people to learn from. So hopefully that kind of answered the question.
It was perfect, because what I'm hearing, right, is goofy and fun and not lame, right? You're not gaming
Right.
the system. You're being you, and that's the same thing. So the same thing that you're teaching your students is the thing that you're doing, you're modeling, I wasn't trying to catch you at that. You said it. It's yes. Yes. I kind of suspected you would, and you did. And I appreciate that about you.
I think like the whole leading by example has been my MO from the beginning. I am thankful in that I had some wonderful vocal training when I was in high school and was able to then develop even more as a college singer. And so being able to like use my voice specifically has been really wonderful for me to be able to model. And so I think that piece has kind of threaded its way through my teaching in such a large way, and that I'm trying to model anything that I want them to learn on a regular basis. Specifically, like my voice, I'm modeling with them on a regular basis, and that I think was the impetus for me wanting to be modeling everything that I'm doing on a regular basis.
As we started this conversation, one of the things that I nodded to and that I've always appreciated about you is the integration between your whole self, your work self, and your at-home self. Are you when we met, you didn't have kids, and now you do. You've got two. So how is that changing, or is it changing? Are you able to balance the work-life thing? How is that going for you?
There are definitely times when it is a struggle to balance the schedule of being a teacher with the extracurriculars that I've got and being a father, because there are times when I will be at the school until 11, 12 o'clock at night, and don't get to, put my kids to bed or things like that, which is hard. I'm thankful that my wife is also a choral musician. We sang the Wartburg Choir together, so she gets that. Even more important, I think, is that she and I direct our musicals together. And so she is at the school with me on a regular basis. And that means that our kids get to come along as well on a regular basis. So I think what I'm trying to do as much as possible is just incorporate them into this life as much as I can, and let them just kind of be present for everything that I'm doing as much as possible. And definitely sometimes it doesn't work. Like they can't come to a 7 to 10 o'clock, show choir rehearsal on a Monday night. But they can still, come along to things as much as they can. They can come to musical rehearsals, in the afternoon and things like that. But I think mentally what I've really been working on doing is making sure that when I'm done at school, I close my laptop and I am dad, and I make sure that I am dad from 3:30 in the afternoon until 7:30 in the morning, and I make sure that I am there and I am present for them, which means that I try not to answer emails as much as possible, which drives some of my show choir parents nuts, because that is the time when they want the information. I get it. I absolutely do. And it's about their kids. That's why they want that information. So I wholeheartedly understand it. But what I'm really trying to do is separate that as much as possible, with the caveat that they also get to be a part of my work life, which I think is beautiful in some ways, especially the fact that my wife and I love music the way that we do.
Sure. So it's funny, earlier you sort of you had a tone in your voice as you talked about the people who didn't get to do choral music like you do, or choral instruction, and you called it a 9 to 5, and you sort of said, oh, a 9 to 5, and then I'm like, yeah, but you're a teacher, you work like 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. like
right.
9 to 5 sounds awful to you, but your schedule is so exhausting and so grueling. I've been married to a teacher for years. I know what it looks like. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
It's brutal, especially on rehearsal days and during production season, for sure. So if I were to go back and look through some of the things that you've talked about here, right? If we were to summarize high points, the idea as we're talking about, I mean, you're really talking about emotional intelligence here. You're talking about the gifts that you're giving to the young people that you're leading, and I suspect that as you're creating better work days for the colleagues that you're working around, you're showing up as your authentic self. You're being vulnerable where you can. You're making time to read the room, right? Read the temperature of the room. room. You're allowing people to feel their feelings through music. And recognizing that it starts with the person, that each individual person is different. Acknowledging that productivity may not happen in that moment the way you think. It may look something different. And then with your projects that you're talking about, you're modeling what you say, right? You're doing again what you just said. You're trying to teach others, and I love how that's showing up. I think that your balance of workplace and family, I love this idea of boundary making. You've got some boundaries that you're setting in, but you're also integrating the things that make sense to integrate for your family because of the interests that you and your family share. And that's creating a future that will be really, really great for your own kids too, which I think is really cool. So what haven't we covered that you want to make sure that we cover as we're thinking about making great work days?
Yeah, I think that work-life balance, I could talk about that forever. And you did catch me there because I think of a 9 to 5 as like one of those things that, it can be so grueling, because you're just like I just picture like somebody sitting in a cubicle and then the boss walks by with a cup of coffee every once in a while, things like that. Whereas like I get to go and like do music with young people. Like how beautiful is that, and so fun. But you're right, like it's all about the quality of time that you get, rather than the quantity of time. I think I am so thankful in that I use my time in such a way that I am having fun with my kids on a regular, with my students on a regular basis, and finding ways to like bring that joy into whatever you're doing. I think is a good thing. But like you said, it all has to start with the people first. It has to start with who you've got. It all has to start with, reading the temperature of the room, or finding what makes people around you tick in order to help create that environment that is going to be more positive, both for them and for you.
Right. And that starts with the choice of how we show up ourselves, right?
Yep, exactly.
For sure. Well, this would not be the Even Better podcast if I didn't ask my trademark question. What's making you even better these days?
Oh, what is making me even better? Too much coffee. I think I have started reading a lot more than I ever used to. My wife has kind of like kicked me off into getting out of a reading slump. So I have been able to just kind of like delve into different worlds and being able to see how different characters develop and things like that, which is not something that I used to be very passionate about. When I was a teenager, I would play video games and I would go do sports and music, and now that I have a little bit, I shouldn't say free time because there's very rarely free time, but when I get a chance to do that, I feel like I am a better version of myself because I am getting to have these different experiences, even though it's maybe living vicariously through a character. I think just the tranquility of reading a book has been really, really nice in my life and has really helped me kind of relax throughout the year, and get away from some of the stressors of work.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for your time today. What a joy to spend this time with you. Thank you.
And thank you so much for the invite. This is a beautiful concept for a podcast, and you do a wonderful job. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, and thanks for all you do for our community. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.
And thank you. And for those of you who are listening, thanks for listening. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.